Thank you for being who you are as a people. You don't know what to think about us.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, you did decide, and now it's we're here, and we've got to work it out. Thank you, Gene.
First off, I want to say thank you for inviting me again. I was here last year. How many were here last year in this room last year? About a little less than half, maybe half. And the reason why I'm asking is because I might say a few things that I repeated last year, but I'm not going to go too in depth on my previous speech. And I want to also acknowledge the food. We always acknowledge our food, the nutrition that's given us by the Creator, and I appreciate all the people that helped and volunteered and made this happen today. And some of you might have been on the website, the oldcrossing.org website, and Virgil was kind enough to write up a little bit of a story about him and I, and him and I went back and forth on that a couple times, and I took out all the bad stuff that he was saying about me and put in the good stuff. But so thank you, Virgil, for acknowledging me and kind of this the theme I think we're getting into is friendship, right? And the friendship that him and I established on day one, the first time I met him, and it was really incredible. Where it's always been about peace. Peace equals friendship, right? And it was I'm a veteran, by the way, and one of our veterans from the tribe, he's one of the few remaining World War II veterans. He's since been passed now, but it was about 2012, 2011, right around that time. He told us veterans, we need to get out to Old Crossing and acknowledge Old Crossing. That's something that the tribe hasn't been really actively doing, and so he pushed us to that. And so we scrambled around and tried to come up with what we're going to do, how we're going to do this, and so we did come out in to acknowledge 150 years. Of the Old Crossing Treaty signing, and we got some veterans together, we got some singers together, we got some community members together, and we all came out that morning, and we pulled into the park. And what was so amazing about that moment was there was already people there, but they weren't natives. They were locals from right around Red Lake Falls and right around Hewitt. I still have a problem pronouncing that, so forgive me if I get it wrong. But some local folks there, and we all parked our cars and jumped out, and they had some tables up there. They had some food, some drinks, a few things there, and one particular lady, I wouldn't recognize her. Okay.
And she's on your website, on one of them that you have, and there she is serving her soup, so it is very true.
So Marjorie, huh?
Yeah,
So Marjorie, I guess she was the first person I got a chance to say something to as I walked up there, and she said something to me that was really it stuck to me then, and it sticks to me today, and it'll stick to me forever. And she said, "We've been waiting for you, and welcome, we've been waiting for you." And I thought, well, did she say that she's been waiting all day? The soup is getting cold. They're waiting for you guys, because it was cold that morning. But no, that's not what she meant. She meant that they've been waiting for tribal members to come out there and do something at the park at that particular point in time, and that stuck with me. It's like, as long as I can help it, as long as I'm able to walk and to ride and drive and do whatever I can, I'm going to be out there at the park during the commemoration of the Old Crossing Treaty for the rest of my life. And the funny part about it is she was right. She was absolutely right that the tribe dropped the ball, meaning it wasn't something that they actively taught in the schools and in the colleges and in community meetings. You know, matter of fact, I didn't learn about the Old Crossing Treaty till I was an adult. And you know, some of that history, of course, gets forgotten. Some of that history, of course, is maybe not forgotten, but just maybe purposely kind of pushed off to the side. And you know, I as I'm coming over here today, I'm thinking, you know, there's no way to hardly escape the politics of the day. It really isn't. We're surrounded by it. It's everywhere. It's in the news. It's on the radio. It's as you're driving on the highway. But you know, there's been a real conscientious effort over the last 50 years, if you will, you know, to acknowledge, you know, indigenous people. Okay, and some of that acknowledgement is, okay, sure, let's say some sorries. Let's apologize for some of these things here and some of these things there. You know, those are actually good things good positive things that compel friendship. Those are things that we really, you know, feel. Those are steps in the right direction. And so now it's, you know, there's been a conscientious effort to get some of this history into the schools. Minnesota passed a law here recently. I'm not exactly sure. It's not been too long, a few years. It's called Indigenous Education for All. And meaning that every school in Minnesota has to provide some sort of real basic curriculum regarding indigenous history. If you're in the south part of the state, you know, they talk more about the Lakota. If you're in the northern part of the state, they talk a lot more about the Ojibwe. You know, I don't know what the exact curriculum is, but it could be just some basic acknowledgement, and in an attempt to make sure that they're doing things right, they're acknowledging, and we felt good about it. And then there was more discussion on how to really expand on that. And so all the tribes, they put together a committee, some sort of steering committee to how to write that curriculum, what's the right stuff to put in there that we want to teach our kids, not only tribal kids, but non-native kids too. And so they were building on this curriculum and stuff, and so making it work, making it happen, and that's all in this thing we call friendship. Trying to make sure we understand each other, where we come from, who we are, you know, what our purpose is as neighbors. Well, of course, obviously, there's a bill on the floor that wants to disband it, just change that momentum, you know, and you know, it's upsetting, you know, it's heartbreaking. Some of the things that are going on at that level, and I'm here to ask and pray and beg and plead, you know, as we evolve as neighbors, as we grow as neighbors, as we meet and talk and learn about each other, you know, to understand, you know, our side of the story. You know, Virgil mentioned a little bit about the Old Crossing Treaty. Yeah, sure, you know, that happened a while back. It was you know, years ago, well before all of us. And there's no animosity there about that particular treaty. We can't do nothing about it. What's done is done. And sure, many scholars over the years have studied it, studied the language, the writing, all these different things. They even studied who the people that signed the treaty, and found out some really valuable information about these individuals that signed it on behalf of the U.S. government. And through all those different studies, you know, you can kind of get a picture of the intent and all that. It was growth and money and all that. But today, you know, we can't change that. So what do we do today? we definitely acknowledge it. We definitely remember it. We definitely teach it. And we say, you know, that was our contribution to the United States at that particular time in the mid 1800s. You know, that was, you look around at this old crossing treaty area, you know, that's some of the most fertile farmland in the world. We all know that. We talk about the breadbasket of America right here. We're sitting right here. We're part of that right here on this land right here. It's amazing to think about that this old crossing territory here could feed America, could feed the world, and it has fed America, and it has fed the world, and a lot of great things have happened in that land, and it was once Red Lake tribal property. But we want to teach that. We want to acknowledge that. We want to remember that. We want to make sure that people, you know, don't turn their backs on the history, you know, the learning of it, and be respectful. You know, be respectful of each other of you know, the paths that we've taken, you know, since that time, and. After that day, that my very first time ever at the park, after that day and moving forward, you know, it's been kind of like a mission of mine to make sure that, you know, we come out and we meet the folks there, and we talk to them and we acknowledge them with a friendship in our minds. As the years gone by since that day, you know, back home, it's also been a mission of mine back home to teach the children, teach the young adults, and teach the adults that know very little about the treaty. You know, we have over 17,000 tribal members. We just went over that number here recently within the last year, and a lot of the adults, you know, never heard of the treaty, never heard of it, never been there. You know, that's a travesty on our part, how that we dropped the ball on making sure that people don't know about this. And they didn't teach me. I had to learn on my own. And so when we go out to the park to commemorate Old Crossing, we have a ceremony there. We sing some songs, have a drum. Myself, along with the other tribal veterans, show up. We lower the American flag and we raise the tribal flag. We do our activities, and then we eat, we talk, we share, we laugh, and then it only lasts a few hours, and then at the end of the day, we lower our flag and put back the American flag, and we go home. We feel at a very minimum, that's the least we can do. The last couple years, it's become a little bit more than that. We believe, myself and with the help of a few other tribal folks, want to turn that event into a more of a learning event. We did, in 2024, it was only a one-day event because it happened during the week. The year before that, I believe in 2023, it was a two-day event. And that was when we got up and we did a lot of speeches, a lot of presentations, people there to come in and talk and share history and different things about, not specifically about the treaty, but other things with history and tribes. And so last year, though, during that day, something really miraculous happened that way. I just feel so proud and thrilled and excited. Anybody know what happened last year?
Yeah, I did, because you shared it with me, because I say that just
Besides you.
I want to say that because that's one of the first things you told me when we met after that.
2 busloads of children from Red Lake Falls and there's another school district. Oakley, yes. 2 busloads of students from both those different schools came to visit us at the Old Crossing Treaty that day. like over 60 students, and the staff and chaperones came, and as we were talking, every one of those kids were sitting right there, and I'll tell you, they were probably the best behaved children that I've ever seen in my life. Through all the boring discussions about the treaty and blah, the elk and all this stuff, they sat there. They might not have been focused on eye-to-eye contact, but they were there. They didn't get up and run around. But then finally, as things kind of were winding up, we gave them the opportunity to get up and run to the can, and bam, they took advantage. They went running around, and we had one of our tribal members there, one of our cultural, spiritual gentlemen. He brought some lacrosse sticks, and they all started playing lacrosse, and the kids were, you can't tie a kid up for very long until they want to start running. But they were running and playing. That was it was miraculous to see those children play lacrosse at that point. And I believe, I hope and pray that they come again this year. And one of the things that we did agree on was one day just isn't enough time to share what we want to share on that particular day and time. And we're going to talk about we're going to start up the discussion on a 2-day plan again with all kinds of different topics. Treaty rights, hunting rights, environmental stuff. Of course, maybe a little splash of politics here and there never hurts anybody, but we want to share, we want to teach, we want to show that we care too. We're part of this, and we want to work together on solutions at the ground level, what we can do as friends, what we can do as neighbors to move forward in a really good way, in a good direction. And what does that look like? It looks like a lot of different things, but we can, as a team, as a group, we can narrow that down significantly. Just to give you an example, within that whole Old Crossing Treaty area, sure, we no longer own the land. There's some of that land, not very much inside there, that still belongs to the tribe. But most importantly, we retained our hunting and gathering rights. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but we started exercising our hunting elk again over the last few years, and they've been successful in that. Some of the farmers up in northwestern Minnesota, they say, come on up, I'll tell you right exactly where you go. They're right over there, see them right there? Because they're doing some damage to some farms, and that's kind of why. So we get to exercise our hunting and gathering rights in that area. And so the government, and we, I wanted to bring this up where the government within those treaties, they say, we call it this, they have a trust responsibility to provide education to tribes, healthcare to tribes, housing to tribes, food to tribes, all medical, all that. We call that a trust responsibility and obligation. And to this day, we have to constantly remind them. And of course, there's this term that I'm sure most of us in this room have heard, and the term is called broken promises, broken treaties, where the government says, okay, maybe not specifically to the Red Lake tribe, but the different tribes throughout the country, you move here and we'll provide all these different things to you. Same thing happened, one thing happened, and we call it the Sandy Lake tragedy, a little kind of over towards McGregor, Minnesota. Tribes from Michigan and Wisconsin all came together. The government said, you come to this point, we're going to hand out the rations, we're going to hand out the money, we're going to hand out all this stuff. And they came from hundreds of miles around to that one specific area to receive their provisions. And guess what happened? You'll never guess what happened. They never showed up. And of course, people died as a result of that. People went home because they knew that it wasn't coming, and people died on their way home. Women and children got sick, starved. So that was a tragedy. That's a well-documented thing in history that happened, and and so when I talk about the trust responsibility, that's kind of what we're talking about. And now it's evolved to this day through all these different programs, these government programs, and every one of those are they're under threat now. And as a people, tomorrow I'm going to Minneapolis, as Virgil mentioned. Tomorrow is going to be called Sovereignty Day at the Capitol. Tribal people and tribal leaders throughout the state are going to be down at the Capitol tomorrow, meeting and talking with legislators, reminding them, to help us to fight for the trust responsibilities by the feds and the state. And about a week after that, it's going to be a Red Lake Day at the Capitol, where it's just going to be specifically to the Red Lake tribe going to come down there, meeting with legislators, hopefully the governor and all the lawmakers, and just kind of telling them, we feel threatened. We feel like it's going to impact lives. Whether or not you're a tribal person or not, some of the things that are going on and some of the things that probably will happen over the course of the next couple of years at least, is going to impact us, everybody in this room. It might not happen tomorrow or next week or next month, but there's going to be a trickle-down effect that's going to happen. What does that look like? We don't know yet, but I know it's going to happen. My day job back in Red Lake, I'm a director for our human services programs for the tribe, where we hand out different benefits packages to our members, TANF and GA and different things. We work with people with disabilities and child support and child care, all these different things that are there to help our community members. That's what I do during the day. And when when the impacts of all these different things that are going on at the federal level, people aren't going to be able to shop at the big box stores as much as they used to. That disposable income is going to probably go down a little bit. It's going to impact gaming. People at McDonald's, they're not going to be able to go to McDonald's or Burger King, and people are going to lose their jobs because the business ain't there. All those individuals, guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be knocking on the social services door saying, hey, the unemployment door for services and benefits that otherwise were needed because the economy and jobs were all there. So, those are things that are potentially going to happen, and we're afraid of it, and I hate to kind of talk a little bit about it, but as a friend, as a neighbor, as a community member on and off the reservation, we want to look at these things and talk about them and think about them, and say how does that not only how does that impact me, but what can I do to help it? What can I do to help lessen the impact? And we all know what that is. We all know what that is. And so that's the mission moving forward, make things right, make things good. What I'm here to do is I'm here to help as well. My help is going to impact not only my people, but all the people, everybody in this part of the country. There's one of our programs. It's called the agriculture program, and they say tribes are sovereign. We're a sovereign nation. What does that really mean? Well, it kind of means we're independent of different things, and yet we're still dependent on a lot of things. We can't feed ourselves because we have to go to grocery stores in Bemidji or wherever and get the milk and get the eggs and get the bread and all that. But we're starting to figure out a few things about let's get back to the land. let's get back to growing our own food, our own vegetables. Let's see how that works. It'll help us in a lot of different ways. It'll save us a little bit of money. It has definitely a health impact, you know, and there's more of a connection. There's a lot of good things about this agriculture kind of direction. Within that program, they've received grants and they purchased some. They worked at a farmer. I think it was just south of Grand Forks. They got a grant, I believe it was over $1 million, and they the agreement was we'll buy. I don't know the details. $250,000 to $300,000 of meat 4 times a year for that to equal up that $1 million, and it happened. They brought up turkeys. They brought up meat bundles, and we've handed them out to our family members, our tribal members, and they loved it. You know, they couldn't be more happier because it helps. It came in handy. It did what it was supposed to do. You know, feed people. This last deal, the deal was already made. We're going to purchase again another $250,000 to $300,000 worth of meat. But guess what happened? Part of the budget cuts, they froze those dollars. They froze the dollars. But you know what the farmer said? He goes, I don't care. I'm going to give you the meat anyway, and you pay me when you get the money. And that was just an amazing, heartbreaking kind of sign of this friendship, this bond, this need, this everything that we talk about. And it happened. It happened. There was a couple things. There was a car accident and some sickness and stuff, but we finally pulled it all off last week, where the last of the meat came up, and we handed it out. And now the guy is waiting. But he did say, I'm going to call up my representatives, and I'm going to talk to them and tell them, you know, we want to make sure that those egg dollars do not get clawed back or do not disappear, because I need that for my farm to survive. I'm depending on the tribe to get their money so I can get paid. I believe he contacted Pete Stauber, and Stauber, I'm not sure if he visited him yet, but said he was going to go visit that guy. And I think a couple other state representatives actually went over there to go meet with him. And he was advocating, you know, sure, he's advocating because it's going to impact him, but he's advocating that it impacts a lot of people. It impacts the tribes and him and his farm, and there's going to be more farms with this ag stuff. And so that's how, you know, we have to band together and pull together and really kind of figure out how best are we going to, you know, I don't want to say survive. That might be a bad term, but that's kind of what it is. You know, we want to live our lives the way we're used to living. We've come so accustomed to $2 eggs or whatever that looks like, you know, instead of $8 eggs. And I just mentioned earlier to Sheila that my wife bought a pound of hamburger the other day, $10. And, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, and you think about people that are having problems with their heat and electricity, you know, and either to stay warm or eat some medicine, yes. And so these are kind of troubling times, and I know that we actually, you know, and I'm a little bit older than you might think. I'm older than Alex, I know that. But you know, I was talking to my brother, and he's 2 years older than I am, and we both agreed that we lived some good times in the 70s and, you know, late 60s, mid 70s, and in those times. And sure, there was things going on in them days as well, but we didn't realize it. But those were the times of our lives, you know. Now you fast forward to today, and you look at the environment, you know, the political environment I'm speaking more about, and you're thinking, gosh, you know, what troubling times, and what lies ahead for the children here, you know. How are they going to grow up, and how this is going to impact them, and, you know, what lies ahead for our health care, you know, what lies ahead for the ag, you know. And I was talking a little bit about ag and trust responsibility, in the cedar land, one question that really stuck to my mind was, you know, it's the government's has this trust responsibility to make sure that, you know, that we can hunt and gather, right? But if you look at the birds, I'm not sure how many heard about the story about the birds, but the planet lost 6 to 7 billion birds over the last decade, you know, all over. And what do they eat? You know, the food chain, we all know what the food chain is, the insects and the bugs and all that. But the bugs are disappearing because of the herbicides and the pesticides, all the stuff that's going into the ground, and it's changing the environment. And it impacts even the four-legged, you know, the deer and the elk and the moose. And so what good is retaining a right to hunt and fish and gather if they're not even there, right? Mm-hmm. And so like the fish, right? I know the state made a good decision on setbacks, you know, from farms to creeks and streams and all that, right? And I asked the DNR, I said, who's enforcing that? What mechanism do you have in place that makes sure that setback is actually happening? And you know what they told me? Well, we really haven't gotten that far yet into the law, but I assure you, we will start making sure that those setbacks are being followed. Well, that's not good enough. You know, it's still, seepage is still getting into the water. We all know that. And the fish, you know, nobody wants to eat some of those fish. And so that's the same exact kind of concept with the ground, with the dirt, and how it impacts us. It impacts tribes. It impacts our ability to sustain ourselves and to go get a moose or an elk or a deer in some of these different open areas. And as a neighbor, as a friend, you know, if there's a way that we can work together, we can build, how would I say that, build awareness. If we can build awareness, and some of these things, they're not just for us, they're not just for tribes, they're for all of us, you know, especially our little ones, you know, and how it is that, you know, these things that are happening today, they're going to take a long time to go back to the right direction again if it continues to spiral in the direction that it's going now. And it doesn't matter, well, it kind of does, but it doesn't matter what political side of the spectrum you're on. You know, we have to realize that, you know, become aware of these impacts and the direction. Sure, maybe some of the decisions are positive, are going to help, and I pray that it does happen that way. I pray that maybe none of the stuff that I'm so afraid of is ever going to happen at all. But you know, I just want to make sure, you know, that as we move along day by day, and things kind of happen and trickle down, and more of this and that. One of these days, in a year or 2 or 3 or 5, you're going to say to yourself, I don't remember what that kid's name was at the AFRAN, but he was right. He said it. He knew it. You know, that's my legacy, you know, with the little ones at home, you know, making sure that people remember some of the good things that we talk about, some of the good things that we train and teach with the history, with the tribe, with the land, with the treaties of the land. You know, that's all. That should be all of our goal. Make sure that, you know, we're good stewards. Make sure that we're good neighbors. Make sure that we're, you know, the friendships continue. Make sure that we can go to Chautauqua and teach, and go to Chautauqua and learn. Go to Old Crossing Day, a treaty day at the park, and listen to other tribal members and learn and be open to that. You know, really say, I really want to, I really care. I really think that, you know, some of the things are right. Some of the things the message is right. I think I'm going to go home and I'm going to get on Google and look at something myself, and then bring it back to your communities, your forums, whatever those may be, and say, maybe we can make a tweak or two here. Maybe I can make an adjustment in my train of thought. All those things all make a difference. If it's just one person, it's tough. But if it grows out of this room into a bigger, better thing, even better. I have somebody's going to come join me up here. I think they're learning already. Yeah, and so when I always start these things, I always like to say, the elders always said, one of these days, you're going to be a leader, and I never knew what that meant. I still don't know what that means. I think, but I almost stepped on a little finger there. But I am, I think, somebody that can at least share and talk and remind and encourage and motivate. And I am on the Red Lake Tribal Council, as Virgil mentioned. And, we do have a responsibility. I have a responsibility for our people. But yet, that responsibility isn't just for our people. It's to come here and talk and listen and share and teach and try to make more friends. So I don't have a speech.
You've been talking.
You done pretty good.
And because I don't believe in that, I just like to talk from the heart, like to share what little knowledge I know, what little experience that I have. And I want to just, again, say thank you for listening. Thank you for inviting me up again to talk. And I really, I'm just trying to get in my mind how to best utilize my few minutes of time to encourage, inform, motivate, and really, there's a long history of things that happened that weren't very good and very nice to tribes. And maybe if you're kind enough to invite me next year, we can talk about that too, because that's another hour. So I don't know how much time do I have left. Am I close?
You're really good, because even though you're sort of harnessed up over there in Red Lake, you and your people, kind of harnessed up by history, you wonder if you're even wise or anything like that. Well, I've often thought of wisdom, and the definition I've come out of it wasn't what wisdom is, but where it comes from. It comes from experience that you think about. You don't isolate yourself for fear of making yourself into the last word. I think that's wisdom. You've listened a lot. You're someone who has listened a lot. You're someone who has value for the experiences they've had. And you don't get presumptuous. You don't get arrogant. And I think of the monk out in Arizona who was approached by someone who was in dire need of understanding. And when the fellow made it to the monk's center there, he asked if he could walk around with the head monk, who was especially assigned to him because he was in such deep sorrow and conflict. And they walked around in the desert, around the monk's area there for 2 hours. The monk never said a word, and the other fellow talked and talked and talked. But the monk was full of wisdom, and he knew not how to say too much, nor to assume that he was above anything. And when they sat down in the monk's center, and the fellow says, "What can you do for me? What do you think?" He says, and the monk said, "I think the same damn things you do. It's really tough." And There was wisdom in that, wasn't there? Because from that, I don't know what they said, but they might have said some things that were then meaningful because nobody trumped anybody. Nobody said they were better, higher. Thank you for the tone that you're presenting us with.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be helpful to place a call to our state representative, our state senator from this area, and to our federal representatives and our two senators? Would it be helpful for us to call, make a comment, send an email over your issue immediately because of Sovereignty Day tomorrow?
The short answer is yes, and really, that's how our system works in reality. That's how we really get our message across. And we can sit back and complain day and night, left and right, about all these different things, but if we don't make that phone call, if we don't write that letter, send that email,
Or go down and visit like
or go down and talk to them face to face, right? They don't hear those messages, and and I'm not.
They do count the number.
They do.
Quantity matters.
No, they do, and absolutely right.
Angry grandmothers matters.
Yes. Don't.
And you can call them every day and email them literally every day.
Yep.
I know, I get a lot of, we got your reply, I know, I'm a frequent flyer.
Yeah.
So, but they will respond, and they will, if you do an email or sign a petition, if you call, they will respond. It's a patent letter, we received and we'll take it, whatever, but you could do it daily, you could make it a daily vitamin.
Yeah.
Do you have a suggestion what we could bring up?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, this Indian Education for All thing is really impactful. I read the whole proposal like a couple days ago, and I was going to bring a copy. I thought it was House Bill 1889 or 1890 or something like that. But that's the gist of it was taking, a lot of it was the DEI stuff. Okay, that's what it was about, and and a lot of the stuff that they were proposing to scratch out of there was just like, well, I mean, why scratch that? That makes perfect sense as a human, but a lot of it was actually the Indian Education for All stuff, and that whole thing was kind of wiped off, and so that's the proposal. But like I said, a lot of the stuff that they're scratching was just almost common sense, and it was, and I just kind of really felt shamed and heartbroken that somebody would actually even make an attempt at making these types of changes, and it goes back to what I said about we lived in better times in the past, and certainly I could run faster and all that, but it was a struggle. Yeah, we grew up poor. Yeah, that's why I got my education. I went to school for one reason. Well, two reasons. One is I can go to school in the morning and get breakfast. And I can go to school and get lunch, and then at dinner time I'm on my own. That's how we lived.
Can I interject?
Okay.
I may have already forgotten what I was going to say, but I think I hold on to it. If you do these things that you've been asking about doing, whether it's calling or writing, I ask you, in the name of our organization and how I try to keep the focus in, that you would do what you have to do in the name of friendship for what you have come to learn today. Not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, but as a human being.
So Eugene,
Yes, sir.
I'm a graduate here of Lafayette High School, Red Lake Falls, 1977, a long time ago. But we knew nothing about Hewitt and the treaty and the park. The only thing we knew is there was a couple of young men that drowned in a flood, I think in '69 or something. I don't remember the exact year. But we knew nothing about treaty rights, about sovereignty. So I think this Indian education bill is so very important.
Yeah, so it is law now, so the momentum's there to build onto that and make those curriculum changes and put them into schools. But the House floor bill that I'm talking about now is an attempt to, repeal it. And I get this question asked a lot, and I just want to answer it. I know somebody probably might have a question about it, but I was at Chautauqua. Virgil invited me down there. I got on stage. I did a little speech there. And one of the questions that was asked was the fact that Red Lake's been labeled this closed reservation, and they go, "What does that mean?" And that's a good question. It's a hard to answer question because I don't even know what it means sometimes. And when I was a kid and I heard closed reservation, I always thought, yeah, there's these big giant doors at the border that, that when somebody wants to come on, they got to knock on the door and we open the door and let them on. It's not like that. But so there's this law. It's called PL something 280. We're not a 280 tribe, meaning we have our own courts, we have our own police force. Those are some of the things that we feel is important for our own identity and our own sovereignty. And so that doesn't mean, somebody asked about the powwows, do they still happen? Yes, they still happen. Every year we celebrate, it's almost the same time it is the same time as the 4th of July. But our treaty, one of our agreements, and I have to get this right, was signed on July 6th. So we acknowledged the July 6th holiday, tribal holiday, at the same time as the 4th of July holiday. But more than anything, anybody's welcome to attend and come see, take a peek, and test out some of the fry bread or the food stands, or look at some of the crafts, all that kind of stuff, and take some photos. That's watch the veterans, and all that kind of stuff takes place during that event. And but you can rest assured you're going to come in and be safe about it too. That's the thing. It's not like we're trying to keep everybody out and chase people away. And we want to share. We want people to come and visit. Last summer, we had a group. It was a Mennonite group. They came up 2 summers in a row to help us with some storm damage. There was actually a couple tornadoes that came up and did a lot of damage, and some big hailstorms came in and did a lot of damage to a good part of the southern part of the lake there. And FEMA came up at that time, visited, took a tour of the damage, and they went back to DC and they said, nope, doesn't qualify. And so here we had probably, I'd say it's about $2 million worth of damage to homes and buildings and vehicles and all that. And the tribe didn't have those dollars to elders' homes, trees falling on elders' homes, and water's leaking in their kitchen, stuff like that. We did come up with some dollars. It was about $800,000 to help the most vulnerable, the elders and the ones that had the most damage. But that money went. Out of that $800,000, $400,000 went to parts and $400,000 went to labor. So it really didn't help a lot of homes. The Mennonites came to town, and I don't know any other better way to put it, but I always told them that the Creator brought the Mennonites to us, and we met with them. They did a tour. They have a service. It's called Mennonite Disaster Services. They go around the country and helping communities in times of disaster, fires and floods and tornadoes and stuff like that. And they came and they said, "We can help you. We can help you. We'll buy the parts. We'll do the labor. And only thing that we ask is you put us up somewhere where we can cook and clean and shower and sleep." And we built a new trading post about 10 years ago, maybe give or take. But the old trading post was sitting empty. We ripped it all apart, invested a lot of money into the electrical, the sewer, the fire suppression, the roof. We pumped in a lot of money to that building, and we housed the Mennonites for 2 summers, and they came in and helped us, and they attended our powwows. They attended different community events, and it was just an amazing kind of a friendship that we developed during those 2 years, and we could be more thankful for that group to come and help. Matter of fact, they have a website, and there's a video on there, and I'm not going to tell you any names of who's on that video, but you can only guess. So anyway, we have friends, we have people, they see the homes, that group's seen the homes, they see the kids, they see the plight, they see some of the despair. It's there, it happens, and you know, we just want to survive, and we want our government to uphold its responsibility, its trust responsibility, its treaty obligations, and but more importantly, we want the government to hold up its obligation to everybody in this room too, all the farmers, all the elders, all the veterans, you know, all the schools, you name it. Those are all things that are either have been chopped or are going to be chopped, and it's coming to Red Lake Falls. It's coming to town, and it's going to impact us. So, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
All day long.
Okay.
But do you have a website a page from the tribe that you could share with us that we could look at?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. I think it's redlakenation.org. Okay. Sure, the website needs some help. You know, there's some information on there. There's lists all the programs, contact information.
Maybe we could share that on our website.
But there's another website. It's called Red Lake Net News, RLNN.com. It's owned by a private tribal member, and he puts up kind of news stories and events and stuff, you know, good things that are happening amongst the tribe. So those are two. The first one I mentioned was just tribally government specific, but the second was more informational. Yep.
Could you repeat that again, the second one?
RLNN.com. You're invited October 2nd. We don't know if it's going to be, I think it's going to be the first and the second. It was going to be a 2-day event. So, like I said, we want to do a 2-day event because there's just so much to share. But what happened last year, I forgot to mention this, is if you can imagine, the old Crossing Park is, I don't even know how many miles it is away from Red Lake. I think it's 100 miles maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe a little more, 110, something like that. All the tribal people, they didn't jump in their cars and drive there, you know. So some of them, you know, a lot of them walked. Some of them jumped in canoes and took the river down, and some of them were on horseback. And this past year in 2024, what we did is we tried to recreate the canoe ride. So we started at the Red Lake, and we didn't do the whole route all the way down. They did 3 different legs from Red Lake to Thief River to maybe St. Hilaire, yeah, and then the final route right out to the park there. And so we're going to do that again. We're going to expand upon that. The water was a little low last year. It was a little dry last year. But our Pembina relatives, we didn't challenge them, but we asked them, you know, to do something different over there on that side, and we want them to do a horse ride because those people, there's no river that goes directly, so they came down on horses. So we want them to come down from Turtle Mountain on horseback to recreate kind of the gathering, and so we'll see how that goes. It's a great concept, and we're going to expand upon that, you know, moving forward this year and into the next year or so. And so AFRAN, you know, I think is kind of a metaphor, or maybe it's vice versa. Our friendship is a metaphor to what could be for the tribe in AFRAN. You know, I think I mentioned how Virgil and I became acquainted and how that friendship grew over the years, and I think that's symbolic of the relationship between the tribe and AFRAN. You know, introduction, discussion, talk about ideas, talk about different things, and how we can grow the partnership. And I think there's room there for that. I think absolutely, you know, we can put our minds together at one certain time and point, and try to figure out, you know, what's on the horizon, what's next, how else can we build the partnership, the friendship between us as neighbors. And I think we can do something. Thank you, Ken.